But I'm sure we all appreciate you checking. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to address the two other SOPs in my name that I haven't talked about yet, but also just to note that for the public, two things. First, that the Minister has confirmed that this bill will not constrain MPs' pay. I mean, what it does, it locks in increases. It will not constrain MPs' pay. MPs' pay will continue to grow at a percentage level and therefore increase the gap between MPs and the lower paid workers in this country. That is what this change will do. It is one of the reasons why we are not supporting this bill. The second thing I would say is the Minister went on at length in the committee stages about the constraining public service pay, constraining government spending, which clearly demonstrates the purpose of this bill. This bill is not designed to meet the public's concerns about MP pay increases. It is designed to have a mechanism to justify keeping public service pay low. That was clear in the reasoning. The Minister has spent more time talking about this as a mechanism to keep public service pay low than about the public concern around MPs' pay increases, which clearly shows the purpose of this bill. So I have two SOPs still. I've described one. I have another SOP which number 50, let's get the right number, I think it's number 59, which uses a different mechanism in terms of the public service. So what this one does is it uses the labour cost index from the labour statistics. Labour market statistics. Now, this SOP is an alternative to the first one. It would mean that over the since 2007, MPs' pay, instead of going up by $30,000, which it does under the current regime, it would have gone up only by $14,000. So we would have had half the pay increases over the last few years than we do have under the current situation. So it is a means to constrain MPs' pay. And is a much better use, a much better measure for public service pay than the QES, because this bill bases the change in salary and wage rates for the public service, but it is a better measure. So the labour market statistics is a much truer measure of the actual rate of increase than the quarterly employment survey, because it measures what people are actually being paid by employers. So this would mean it's a much fairer approach to using public service as some kind of measure. It does mean there would have been a significant decrease in MPs' pay over the last 6 years, and so it is a genuine constraint. The Employment Quarterly Survey can be used, but it is a very crude measure, and what it does in the government's bill is it essentially maintains the status quo and locks in increases. Employers ask Statistics New Zealand about information on pay rates, and they ask about the labour cost index. It's a true measure of the public sector pay. The State Services Commission used the labour cost index. The Human Resources Capability Survey of public service departments use the labour cost index. Even the SSC thinks it is a better measure for looking at pay rates across the public sector. Importantly, we've also linked this to the changes in salary and wages for the public service as opposed to the public sector. The public sector is not an exact group to use for something this important. It's a much wider pool and includes higher wage movements in health, education and local government. So the public service is narrower and it puts MPs in a much closer position to public servants as they are more commonly understood. So it is a better measure. If the intention of the parties is to have a measure that's related to the public service, then our bill, SOP 59, is a much better, clearer measure, and it actually will constrain MPs' increases. Our third SOP, which my colleague James Shaw has also touched on, is the one which essentially removes everything in the bill except for the bit that revokes the current determination. So this SOP number 58 will, if it went through, it would mean that the current determination of the Rem Authority to increase MPs' pay would be stopped. Mr Chair. Mr Chair? Mr Chair? Thank you, Mr Chair. It would mean that this new determination would not proceed. So MPs would not get their pay rise. But it would also mean that there is no additional measure. So the current pay and conditions that MPs are working under would remain. Doing that would give us time to look at this bill through a select committee process, to have an opportunity for MPs and parties to look at each other's alternatives. And I do accept that for other parties who have looked at our SOPs, I understand their concern that they simply haven't had time to assess them properly because there hasn't been time as part of the bill because we are an agency. So it would mean that there would be alternatives other than the Greens, Māori Party, New Zealand First, Labour Party, ACT. I mean, I don't know why, if they're supporting the bill, I'd be very surprised about that, but ACT may have ideas about how to constrain MPs' pay, where all of those ideas would be able to be put on the table, presented to the public. The public would have a chance to investigate, interrogate those ideas, to come to us and tell us what kind of conditions, what criteria, constraints they would like to see, and we would be able to come up with an enduring solution. So there is an option on the table tonight for political parties to stop the current pay increase. That is SOP 58. And then for us to step back a bit, have another look at the Minister's bill, take it to a select committee process properly and have a fuller investigation as to what is the right measure. Because I agree there is no doubt that there are going to be mistakes in this and we're going to have to come back. And, you know, as can happen, the mistake could be significantly, a significant embarrassment to government. Now, it is the kind of thing where you could see where, you know, maybe there won't be that there'll be significant pay increases instead, which is not the government's intention, and they will have to come back to us, government will have to come back to us and ask us to support fixing their mistake, which I frankly see would be extremely difficult to tolerate and to stomach because they have been well warned. The Minister has been well warned that a mistake is likely and that there were alternatives on the table to prevent that from happening. So I would urge members to vote in favour of the preferred option, which is tying MPs' pay to nominal median wage. The second option, which is tying it to the Labour Cost Index, which is a public service measure, but a more appropriate, tighter public service measure. And third, if you don't like either of those measures, to then at least vote for the third SOP to stop the current pay increase so that we can go away and have a good and decent look at this legislation. The fact is the government's got the numbers. I mean, the government's got the numbers to pass whatever legislation they choose, at least for the moment. You know, that's true. So there's no need for urgency. The Minister has made no argument at all for urgency. He hasn't said a single thing about why it all has to be done tonight. While the rest of the country is watching The Bachelor and very distracted, I understand. There is no justification for doing this in urgency, and he has made none because there is none. So it really is shocking that something so serious could be treated so trivially. But I guess, given his own argument that the core reason for this bill is actually to constrain public service pay, then I guess we can't be surprised. It is a shame that National would treat both the Remuneration Authority and the New Zealand public, and particularly the public service, in such a shabby way. Thank you, Mr Chair.